At any rate, like in this game, the rolling shield as an offensive weapon is terrible. Like the charged up version with the shield on you is broke. It's really, really good. But the uncharged, just shooting it as a weapon, it's weak. Okay, it has a big hitbox, and that's about all it's got going for it. But yeah, it does. It messes up, messes up Launch Octopus. It messes up Vile really bad. It does like 6 bars of health off him. You should try it when you get there.
Yep.
Because apparently you didn't know that was a thing.
Nope.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's pretty cool. It does. It rips him apart. And if you're at least halfway decent with firing it, then you're good. And, Joe here is pretty good at the Mega Man games in general. So
I try.
Yeah. But back to the topic of final bosses being weak to shitty weapons. For those unfamiliar with the games in greater detail, X2's final boss is like a wireframe 3D rendered Sigma head thing.
Mode 7.
Spoilers.
Yeah, Mode
Sigma's
7
still alive.
is the much maligned strike chain from Wire Sponge that everybody seems to hate.
Yep.
But I'm going to point out a few things about that weapon. It's actually grossly powerful against most normal enemies. It just has a terrible range.
Right.
And so most people just ignore it because it has awful range, and you have this huge, wide selection of cool effects and better ranged weapons that you can fire off and murder things with. But yeah, the strike chain's really, really powerful against normal enemies. Most people don't know that because they don't use it. And I don't blame them because...
I use it to get the charge weapon, and that's just about it.
You don't really need it, because X2 isn't all that difficult overall. Okay. But yeah, the strike chain is actually a lot handier than most casual people will give it credit for.
Now, I mentioned JKB games. If you remember the charge weapon from X2, it's the same charge weapon they used for their version of the game. And it's freaking awesome.
Nice. That's cool. But even going on to X3, the actual final boss, the giant pink Sigma robot thing, is only vulnerable to the Buster and the Saber. So that one doesn't count so much for this. But the version of Sigma with the blue armor and the shield is weak to the Spinning Blade. And the Spinning Blade looks cool. And it actually is highly useful because of the way it fires. There's a lot of circumstances in the game that were kind of designed for you to utilize that weapon. But it's pathetically weak, and it doesn't do much damage to normal enemies, let alone bosses that aren't named Neon Tiger or Vile.
Or Vile, right.
But yeah, it messes up Sigma, something fierce. It does a lot of damage to Sigma. It's a bitch to hit him with it until you get used to it, but it tears him apart. Once you get used to it, it's actually really easy. But that's another story.
And for those that aren't completely, informed about the X series and how it goes about its bosses, Sigma never dies.
Yeah,
that's not even necessarily a spoiler at this point.
Well, actually,
he just never
that's
dies.
not true because X8 is a thing, and he does in fact die for good, permanently. They write him out of the story.
Wow.
Something they tried to advertise, be like, "You're never fighting Sigma again." It's like, okay, this is the last X game, and that's what happened.
That said, we can keep going because in Mega Man X4, the final boss with the 2-part fight that keeps switching between the 2 forms of Sigma. Again, if you're playing as X, is only vulnerable to the Buster. But the fights beforehand, there's 2 regular fights of Sigma. Yeah, there's the little I'm emulating like the Grim Reaper thing, which you just shoot fire at him, so he's not hard. But the true boss part of that fight, Sigma's normal body, whatever battle, is weak to the goddamn lightning web, which is just fucking terrible.
It's just so stupid.
That is one of the worst weapons in the franchise. It's useful in terms of getting a few items in the game that were specifically placed to require that weapon and its platformness.
You want to know
as a weapon, it is awful, except against Sigma and Split Mushroom.
Yeah, it turns that fight into a complete joke, too.
What?
Split Mushroom, yeah.
A weapon that is just clearly underused, but is actually very useful? The Gravity Well.
Oh, the Gravity Well's awesome. Especially charged.
Yep.
Screen wipes are sick.
Yep.
But going on to X5, it's the same thing. The I forgot what it's even called, the Axel Rose Red's weapon, that stupid, like, spike ball thing.
Oh.
That weapon sucks nads. Like
it does.
It's got it's the rolling shield. It's exactly the rolling shield because it's a big dumb awkward slow weapon with a huge hitbox that does almost no damage to anything. Except it mauls the bejesus out of the final boss.
Yep.
Okay. That's its functional application in the game, is to kill the final boss and piss you off for the entire game otherwise.
See,
Which is bad since Axel Rose Red is actually a rather difficult boss, even with his weakness for that game.
See, that's another testament about how kind of casual I was, especially when I was first starting to play these games, because it's just like, I knew when it came to fighting the Robot Masters, or Mavericks, you had to use their weakness in order to make the fight much easier to do and all that kind of stuff, and the weakness would obviously take off a whole lot more health than your regular Buster would.
Yep.
But beyond that, I wasn't really under the impression that the different weapons actually had different damage ratios as far as who they hit and things like that. Like, when it came to fighting the Wily bosses or the Sigma bosses or whatever, leading up to the final boss, I was under the impression that your best bet was just basically to stick with the Buster rather than having to use some of the other weapons.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the other weapons may have been useful for certain combat scenarios, but for the most part, you just try to stick with the Buster simply because that one didn't require ammo.
Well, it's a good thing you're not familiar with Mega Man 2, because that would get you killed in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The final boss in Mega Man 2 gets fully healed by every weapon except for the Bubble Lead.
Oh wow.
Yeah. One shot of anything will fully heal him.
Wow.
The Bubble Lead causes 2 bars of damage, and everything else heals him to full health.
You almost have to have the Bubble Lead fully charged to beat him. Almost.
No, that's
almost.
not true. You have 4 times the amount of shots you need.
Really?
It takes 14 shots to kill him, and it takes 2 shots. It might have been 3. 2 or 3 shots of the Bubble Lead to use 1 bar of energy on it. Yeah. The energy ratios in Mega Man 2 for weapon usage were the one thing about that game that was unbalanced in favor of the players. Metal Blade.
Yeah.
You don't need to break all those. Just dash jump from the bottom of the platform.
I just tried.
Oh, so you just suck.
No, it could be the control.
No, you don't need to be standing on those blocks. Just right from there.
Right. What I'm saying is that's not working well.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Suck less. I don't know.
Maybe you should have, had the controls be different than how you have them now.
Shut up. With the shutting of the upping.
With the shutting of the upping. I like that.
There we are.
Yeah, he says that a lot when it comes to playing with me.
Oh. I like how you mentioned the boss weakness and them having either higher damage ratios but also sometimes effects in the bosses. And what better time for you to have mentioned that than in this level, because this boss will give you one of the best examples of a boss's weakness in a Mega Man X game, savagely abusing the boss. If I'm assuming Joe remembers
well, I mean,
the trick.
We just recently took on, was it Spark Mandrill? And you...
Yeah.
Oh, no, this is worse.
Oh, okay.
This is worse. Alright, so here's how the fight with Sting Chameleon goes when you have the boomerang cutter, okay? You wait to see which side of the room, he stays on. If he usually he'll jump across right off and latch to the ceiling right off. In which case you turn around, you run in the middle of the screen, you turn around towards him, and you fire the boomerang cutter. If he stays on the same side of the room, you fire a boomerang cutter. Either way, once you hit him with the first shot of the boomerang cutter, you position yourself in the center of the room, and you face whatever direction he's moving towards and fire it.
Right.
You shoot it, and then as soon as it hits him, you turn around and you shoot it. Then you turn around and you shoot it. Then you turn around and you shoot it. You're about to watch it right now. It's gonna happen. And
it better happen.
the reason my voice would have gotten a little weird there is because I stood up and I was actually turning
really
around.
excited.
Yes.
Yeah, he was.
But
for the sake of radio, he was making actual motions because that works.
This is apparently Daniel didn't know this, so this is gonna be his first taste of this, and it's hilarious. Boom. You don't have to wait that long. Fire as soon as it hits him. You're hesitating. You don't even need to.
Oh, this is stupid. I get what you're saying now.
Apparently, Joe didn't know how broken it was.
Yeah.
I didn't actually chain combo where you can't even get it on the wall.
Yeah, it's awful. But yeah, he's the hardest one to beat without getting hit with just the buster.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much just a weakness can change a boss. Anybody who's played Mega Man 7 and fought Junkman with the Thunderbolt knows what I'm talking about. Because it's basically this.
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of the reason why people were kind of getting disappointed with a lot of the later Mega Man X games, because
they got easier.
They got so much.
That's why I like Mega Man X6.
Yeah,
That's why I like X6.
Even with using the abilities, it just got so much easier to just take them down because the pattern got so much more broken. Like, take for instance, the mushroom, which I still forgot his name.
Split mushroom.
Yeah, split mushroom. That fight is a complete joke. I mean, it's almost the same as what we just watched right there.
It's about the same as this.
Yeah.
Junkman in Mega Man 7 for the Super NES is basically that with the Thunderbolt. It's slightly different because here's how it works. You hit him with the Thunderbolt, it stuns him, and he'll always jump to the other side of the room and fire a projectile down on you.
Yeah.
So what you do is you just dash towards him while he dashes the other way, turn around and shoot him, dash back, turn around and shoot him.
Yeah.
And you just repeat that until he dies. It's awful.
Yeah.
But in Mega Man X6, a lot more of the bosses don't have such abusable reactions to their weaknesses.
Right.
So you can't just sit here and chain them like you just saw Joe do with Sting Chameleon. With X6, you still have to have some semblance of gaming ability, even with their weakness, to beat him. And Infinity Maginian is about as good an example as any. He's probably harder to beat with his weakness, since it's hard to apply his weakness in that game. For anybody familiar with X6 at all, but who has never beaten Infinity Maginian, because that's fair. His weakness is the shield shell from Shield Sheldon, which means his weakness is actually
that's a unique name right there.
Which means Infinity Maginian's weakness is actually his own projectiles, because the shield shell is just that. It just reflects projectiles. But the problem is the way Infinity Maginian's fight works, to those who haven't played him, is he's small. He's smaller than X. His sprite.
Wow.
He's the smallest X series boss, actually.
Wow.
He's supposed to be like a water flea.
Right.
He's probably the hardest boss in the X series.
Which is probably why they had to come up with such a kind of weird sounding name. Cause
I think it's like the Japanese word for the water flea.
Yeah, because something water flea just doesn't sound very
right.
very
but
intimidating.
Infinity sounds cool.
Yeah.
At any rate, this boss, when you hit him with a shot of anything, he splits into two. Like, he splits off like a clone, and the clone thing moves about the room and fires off shots. Like, it's literally a second copy of the boss floating around the screen. And he doesn't move around like normal boss. Like, he doesn't just move around on the ground or jump around. He floats. He's always off the ground and floating, but he moves around slowly. But he's basically a bullet hell boss thrown into a Mega Man game.
Yep.
If you can imagine that. Now imagine that every time you hit him, another copy spawns. I mean, there is a limit, and I forget I think it's like 6 copies on the screen, but even 2 copies is pretty bad. But that would be alright and all dandy if, like, the damage inflicted was balanced out, but it's not. He actually inflicts pretty good damage with most of his attacks and even contact, which makes him one of the more unfair bosses in the X series. But also, it means that the way it's hard to describe. If we'll have to have Joe play it on the channel or something.
Have Joe play it.
Well,
the projectiles he fires and the way they move and stuff like that, it makes it really difficult to reflect his projectiles back at him, even though they do cause a lot of damage with the reflect thing. It's probably easier to just beat him with the damn gun.
Yeah.
I mean, because at least with the gun active, you can like actively attack the clones, and some of his projectiles can be destroyed too. So you can kind of keep control of the screen a little bit better with the Buster than just trying to ping him with his own shots.
Now, not to harp on Split Mushroom, because it's like the 3rd time we brought it up, but it actually makes me think that was a much better version of that same fight, because Split Mushroom does kind of do the same thing where he creates copies of himself and they kind of flow about, but you only really experience that if you don't use his ability.
And Infinity Maginian gives no fucks and doesn't afraid of anything.
Yeah.
His stage is actually considered one of the more difficult levels in the X series too. I guess you haven't really played X6?
No.
Oh man, you gotta give it a try. You'll probably still like X4 better, but
well, for me, it's not really a competition. I'm not really. I'm not saying that, I'm not willing to change my opinion. I just don't really care that
No,
much.
I mean, I'm not trying to impress 6 on you in terms of this is a better game, you should like it. But if you haven't played it before, I do recommend it, especially if you do enjoy a challenge, because it is much harder than X5 and X4.
Right.
Sometimes I enjoy
runs on the same
challenge.
engine though, so I mean, it'll be an easy adjustment for you to make because it's the same game engine.